My 16-year-old daughter spent Christmas alone in an empty house because my own family told her there was no room for her at the table. My revenge came the next morning, and their screams were heard all over the street. I'm Emily, I'm 38, and I can't believe I'm writing this. It's only been 2 weeks since that Christmas, and I still don't know how I'm supposed to move on. If anyone had told me that my mother, father, and biological sister were capable of such filth, I would have laughed in their face. But it happened. And it changed everything. I work as a nurse, and Christmas always means shifts for me. I'm not complaining, I knew what I was getting into. This year, I had a double shift to clear up some holiday debt. Amanda, my daughter, wanted a new laptop for college, and I wanted to get it for her. My parents, Martha and Robert, and my sister, Sarah, live in the same town, 2 hours away from me. We always arranged for Amanda to go to them and spend the holiday with them while I worked. We've been doing this for years. They always played the part of the loving grandparents and aunt. My shifts ended at 5 in the morning on December 26th, and I was supposed to drive straight there to pick her up. I called them in the afternoon on the 25th to make sure everything was fine. Mom, Martha, was a little cold, but said everything was okay. They had just eaten and would be opening presents soon. I heard laughter in the background and felt reassured. Tell Amanda I love her, I asked. Of course, Emily, she said, with that indifferent tone she uses when I interrupt her. I went back to work, feeling guilty but relieved. I thought my daughter was warm, safe, and surrounded by family. The shift was hell, the ward was overflowing. At 5 in the morning on the 26th, like a zombie, I got into the car and drove to their place. I was so exhausted I could barely see the road. I called Amanda when I was 10 minutes away so she could get ready. I expected to see her in her pajamas, happy, with stories about the gifts. Instead, my call immediately went to voicemail. I called Mom. Voicemail too. I worried, but thought they might be asleep or something. I pulled up to their house. All the lights were off, except for a night light in the hallway. I walked up to the door and rang the bell. Silence. I rang again, more insistently. Nothing. I took out my phone to check if I had the wrong house, although that was impossible. At that moment, my phone lit up, and I saw a message from Amanda, sent at 10:47 p.m. on December 25th, Christmas night. Mom, I'm home. Don't worry. I called a taxi. They said there was no room for me. I didn't want to upset you while you were at work. I love you. Come when you can. My heart squeezed so hard I felt physical pain. They said there was no room for me. Those 7 words hit me harder than any grief I've ever experienced. My parents, my sister, on Christmas night, in their big, damn house, told my 16-year-old daughter she was surplus. She had to sit alone in an empty house while I worked to ensure her future. I don't know how I didn't start screaming right there in front of their damn door. I just froze. I felt my whole world collapsing. I saw an ambulance drive past. And I stood there like an idiot, not believing what I was reading. I couldn't afford to cry. I had to keep it together. I just turned around, got back in the car, and drove home. My anger was cold and pure. It was like a steel blade. I knew I couldn't let this go. This wasn't just an offense, it was a betrayal. I got home, and Amanda was sleeping, curled up on the couch. The laptop I bought was lying next to her, wrapped. I sat next to her and just watched her. My girl. She woke up, saw me, and cried. She told me what happened. During dinner, as they were all sitting at the table, my sister Sarah started talking about how her husband, John, couldn't make it due to an urgent business trip, and she was upset. My father, Robert, had apparently drunk too much and said, "Well, at least you don't have to tolerate an extra guest." Amanda asked what he meant. And my mother, Martha, my mother, looked at her and said, "Amanda, we just wanted to spend the evening with close family. Maybe you should go home. Emily will be late anyway. You're a big girl now, you can call a taxi yourself, and we'll relax here a bit." They gave her $40 for the cab and sent her away. A 16-year-old girl. On Christmas night. I sat there, listening to her, and my breathing became heavy. I felt all the blood rush to my head. In that moment, I knew what I would do. I was ready for war. And I knew how to deliver a blow they would never forget. This wasn't just revenge. This was about restoring justice for my daughter, who learned that Christmas night what true betrayal was. I waited until Amanda fell asleep again, kissed her on the forehead, and sat down at the table. I took a pen and paper. This wouldn't be a text or a call. This would be the last thing they would ever hear from me, and it would cost them more than they could imagine. I wouldn't scream or curse. My words would be cold and precise, like a surgeon's knife. I was going to take something from them that they valued more than family ties. I didn't sleep a wink that night. Not even close. The silence in the house was deafening, broken only by Amanda's soft, uneven breathing from the living room. Around 9 a.m., she woke up. She was quiet, too quiet for a teenager. Usually, Christmas morning, even the day after, is chaos, excitement, a flurry of activity. Not this time. She made coffee, the cheapest instant stuff she could find, and sat across from me at the kitchen table. We didn't talk about it. We talked about the laptop. I told her to unwrap it, and she did, slowly. She managed a small, genuine smile when she saw the model she wanted. That small moment of light was the only reason I hadn't broken something yet. I needed to protect that smile, no matter the cost to my parents, Martha and Robert, or my sister, Sarah. They had taken the joy out of a holiday meant for family, my family, and replaced it with this gaping, cold hole where trust used to be. I spent the morning cleaning, straightening the house, doing anything physical to keep the rage from boiling over into immediate, messy confrontation. Confrontation wasn't the goal, consequences were. I needed absolute clarity on what I was taking from them. For years, my parents had been obsessed with their legacy, their pristine image in the small community, and the perceived success of their perfect family. Sarah, my sister, is their golden child, always has been. She marries well, she volunteers, she has 2 perfect kids, Ethan and Chloe, and she leverages every achievement to look down on me, the unstable one who chose a demanding career over a traditional path. Amanda, my daughter, is the wild card in their perfect deck, brilliant, but a little too outspoken, a little too much like me, maybe. They always treated her with a thin veneer of forced tolerance, waiting for her to mess up so they could point to her and say, "See? Emily didn't raise her right." I remember an argument last summer when my father refused to co-sign a loan for Amanda's summer camp because he thought it was a waste of money on a child who won't amount to anything useful. I paid for it myself, of course. I'd been paying for everything, college savings, reliable car insurance, anything that smacked of real responsibility, because they simply won't. They want the title of grandparents and parents, the social benefit, without any of the actual burden or unconditional love. I looked at the clock, 11:30 a.m. The family usually has their post-Christmas brunch around noon, a tradition my mother started years ago to show off her perfect silverware. It was time to act. I walked back to the table where I had left the envelope. It was thick, sealed with my own wax seal, a black, anonymous blob that felt very appropriate. I kissed Amanda goodbye again. "Stay here, finish setting up your new machine. Don't answer the door for anyone but me, understood? I'll be back before dinner." Her eyes were wide, full of understanding and a terrifying sort of admiration. She just nodded, holding the edge of the table. She knew this wasn't going to be a polite conversation. I got into my car, the same one that drove me back from the hospital only hours before, now fueled by something much more potent than exhaustion. The drive to their house felt incredibly short. I didn't speed, I drove the limit. Every mile was a chance to steel my nerves, to turn the white-hot pain of the night before into sharp, focused intent. I wasn't going there to yell. I was going there to sever a connection that had proven itself poisonous. When I pulled into their driveway, their massive SUV was there, and the house lights were on. I could hear faint noise inside, probably them nursing hangovers and deciding what to talk about to fill the awkward silence left by Amanda's departure. I got out, briefcase in hand, it contained the letters and the paperwork, and walked up their front steps. I didn't ring the bell. I knocked, loud and firm, the kind of knock that implies an emergency, or, in this case, a necessary execution. The door opened almost immediately. It was Sarah. She looked surprised, then instantly annoyed. Emily? What the hell? We thought you were home with Amanda. Her eyes flickered behind her, looking for an excuse. I didn't even look at her face. I looked right past her, into the foyer where my father was already standing, a glass of orange juice in his hand, looking confused. My mother, Martha, was just behind him, her mouth already set in a defensive line. The brunch was clearly in full swing. Good morning, family, I said, my voice level, cutting through the muffled sounds of cutlery and light conversation coming from the dining room. I didn't come for brunch. I came to deliver this. I held up the thick envelope, letting the morning sunlight catch the stark black wax seal. Sarah took a step back, instinctively recognizing the seriousness of the presentation. This is for all of you. Read it. Now. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't come to my house. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked back to my car, leaving the three of them frozen on their expensive Persian rug, staring at the ominous package I had just delivered into the heart of their perfect Christmas gathering. The suspense was the hardest part, knowing what I had set in motion, but having to wait for the fallout. I drove away, the image of their stunned faces burned into my memory, knowing the next few hours would be agonizing silence before the inevitable explosion. The wait was excruciating. I got home just before noon, and the house was still quiet, but the quiet felt charged now, like the air before a massive thunderstorm. Amanda was trying to work on her new laptop, but her focus kept breaking. She kept looking toward the front window, expecting a call, a knock, anything. I told her to focus on the machine, this was my fight now, and I needed her safe and grounded. For nearly 3 hours, there was nothing but dead air. No frantic calls from my mother's number, no angry texts from Sarah. It was the quiet that was the most terrifying, the kind of silence that follows a bomb blast, where everyone is waiting to see who survived the initial shockwave. I checked my phone every 5 minutes, fighting the urge to drive back there just to watch them read it. Around 3 p.m., my phone finally exploded. It wasn't a call, it was a group text, one I hadn't even realized my parents were part of, which also included Sarah, and, God help me, my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, who lives across the country and whom I haven't spoken to in 5 years. The text was from my father, Robert. It was all caps, shaky, and furious. Robert, Emily, what the hell is this? You cannot be serious. This is insane. You have gone too far. Call me now. I didn't respond. I looked at the group members. Carol was already in. The sheer panic in his capitalization told me they had read the letter, and whatever was in it, whatever I used as leverage, had hit them where it hurt the most. I knew my weapon had to be something monumental, something that targeted their deepest, most guarded secret, the one thing they protected more ferociously than their pride, money and reputation. I remembered the fine print of the trust my grandfather set up 20 years ago. It was supposed to benefit all his grandchildren equally upon reaching maturity, Amanda and Sarah's kids, Ethan and Chloe. But Dad, as the primary executor, always managed the funds, assuring everyone that his side of the family's inheritance was managed separately. I had spent the entire previous year, under the guise of helping them with some tax documents, getting access to the actual, hidden financial reports for that trust. What I found was not just mismanagement, it was deliberate siphoning, carefully disguised through shell accounts and questionable investment opportunities that only ever benefited my father's pet projects, not the kids. He had systematically gutted the trust intended for Sarah's children, using the capital as a personal slush fund, all while making sure Sarah never looked too closely, simply because he controlled the narrative. I didn't write threats in the letter. I wrote facts. I enclosed photocopies of bank statements, transaction summaries, and the notarized affidavit from the retired lawyer who handled the original filing, the one my father thought was safely retired and silent. The letter simply stated that I was moving forward with a formal, public inquiry into fiduciary misconduct and fraud involving the grandfather's family trust, naming Robert as the sole responsible party, unless they immediately met specific, non-monetary conditions related to Amanda's future and a public, formal apology. The group chat immediately erupted. Sarah, bless her ignorance, was the first to respond to her father's panicked message. "Sarah, Dad, what is she talking about? What did you do? Mom is crying. What's in that letter? Martha, Emily. Stop this madness. We will sue you for harassment. What conditions? What conditions for Amanda?" The conditions for Amanda were simple: a formal, notarized statement from all three of them admitting their wrong and expressing genuine remorse to her, to be read aloud to her, and a commitment in writing to never interfere with my parenting decisions again. A moral victory, but a small price for what I held over their heads. My father, Robert, finally typed out a message that was just shaking capital letters, devoid of punctuation. "Robert, you will destroy your mother, you will destroy Sarah's future, you will destroy everything we have built. This is blackmail, Emily, I swear to God." The word blackmail stung, but I let it land. He was grasping at straws. My reply was the first message I sent to the entire group, delayed by 10 minutes to maximize their anxiety. It was short, clipped, and devoid of any emotion. "Emily, it's not blackmail, Robert. It's evidence. And I didn't destroy anything. You did. You have 48 hours to comply with the terms regarding Amanda, or the actual documents go to the State Attorney General's office. I'll let the law deal with the trust. You'll deal with Amanda's immediate future. Your choice." I blocked all three of their numbers immediately after sending that. The sound of my phone vibrating violently against the table was the first true satisfaction I'd felt since finding out what happened the night before. The silence returned, but this time it was my silence. I had thrown the grenade, and now I was waiting for the dust to settle before I saw the true damage. Amanda looked at me, pale but steady. "Mom," she whispered. I just shook my head, a small, grim smile touching my lips. "We wait. They'll break soon. They always do when their money is on the line. The next day would tell us which one would shatter first, the reputation or the family unit." 48 hours felt like 48 years. I kept Amanda occupied, letting her immerse herself in her new computer, occasionally glancing up as I moved through the house, performing meaningless chores. The blocking was absolute. No calls, no texts, just a digital void where my parents and sister used to be. On the morning of the deadline, the morning of the 29th, I unblocked only my father's number. I figured he was the weak link, the one who would crack under the threat of losing everything he spent his life hoarding. The call came at 9:05 a.m. sharp. His voice wasn't angry this time, it was low, gravelly, and laced with a terror that I hadn't thought him capable of producing. "Emily. Stop this. Just stop. We'll do it. We'll write whatever you want for Amanda. Just give me the documents back. Do you have any idea what you are doing to Sarah? She found out about the trust yesterday. She is completely hysterical. She is blaming me, Emily. She's screaming about how I've ruined her kid's future." That was the first moment my absolute certainty wavered. I had anticipated rage, denial, maybe even a lawsuit. I had not anticipated Sarah finding out about the trust mismanagement from me. I had engineered the situation so that Robert would be exposed first, forcing him to confess to Sarah to save himself, thereby destroying his marriage to Martha and fracturing his relationship with Sarah completely. I wanted them to dismantle their facade from the inside out. "I don't care what Sarah is doing, Robert," I managed, my voice dangerously steady. "She needs to understand the consequence of enabling you for 2 decades. My terms stand. The apology for Amanda must be delivered by noon today, and it must be what I wrote. Then, we talk about the paperwork." There was a long, shuddering pause on the line. "You don't understand," he finally hissed, and now there was a distinct edge of panic that sounded less like financial fear and more like personal exposure. It's not just the money I moved. That was bad, I admit that. But the part you have, the notarized affidavit from old Mr. Henderson? Emily, that's not just about the trust fund. That document proves I lied on the initial grant application 25 years ago to secure the initial seed money for my first company. If that comes out, I lose everything. Not just the trust. My pension, my directorships. Martha's inheritance, it's all tied up in those initial holdings. You'll bankrupt us. All of us. This was the twist. My target had been wealth protection and reputation. I had been aiming for a clean shot at his financial empire built on lies, but I had inadvertently discovered the foundation of that empire was built on an even older, deeper lie. This wasn't just about punishing him for dismissing Amanda, this was about bringing down the entire corrupt structure he'd built his life upon. The moral dilemma hit me like a physical blow. On one hand, I had a legitimate reason for my actions, the cruelty to my daughter. On the other, exposing the original 25-year-old fraud would not just ruin my parents, it would directly impact Sarah's financial security, the very thing she cherished. If Robert went down, Sarah's access to the family money, the money he managed, would vanish. She would be left with almost nothing, possibly exposing her own complicity through her ignorance. I looked over at Amanda, asleep again, exhausted by the sheer emotional weight of the last few days. Was I willing to destroy my sister's life, not just her pride, to ensure my parents finally admitted they were wrong about my child? The line between justice for Amanda and catastrophic revenge against the entire family had blurred into an indistinguishable mess. I suddenly felt very cold, the rage draining out, leaving behind only the heavy, terrifying weight of total control. I had the power to erase their entire existence, but in doing so, I might be erasing the security of the only other relative who had any blood tie left to me, Sarah. Robert, I said slowly, testing the words. I need you to think about this very carefully. You have until noon. You have the choice of admitting your petty cruelty to your granddaughter, or letting me uncover the crime that started it all 25 years ago. I'm not bluffing anymore. You've just shown me exactly how much you have to lose. I hung up before he could respond. The choice was no longer just about my daughter, it was about which level of destruction I was morally capable of executing. The clock ticked toward noon. The tension in the house was so thick you could practically taste it, metallic, like old pennies. Amanda was wide awake now, sitting at the dining table, her face devoid of color. She knew something monumental was about to happen. I didn't need to tell her. The silence from her grandparents and aunt was deafening across the distance. I kept my phone on speaker, placed squarely in the center of the table, facing both of us, as if Amanda needed to hear the inevitable collapse in real time. At 11:52 a.m., my father called back. He didn't even bother with pleasantries. His voice was a defeated whisper, the sound of a man whose entire constructed reality had just been bulldozed. Emily. It's done. They're coming. Martha, Sarah, and I. We'll be there in 20 minutes. We'll read it. We'll sign whatever you put in front of us regarding Amanda. Just, for God's sake, don't send Henderson's affidavit to anyone. Please, Emily. I'm begging you. I can't lose everything now. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a strange, hollow calm wash over the lingering storm inside me. This was the climax. The moment where I had to decide whether to accept the small justice or pursue the total annihilation he feared. You have until 12:15, Robert. And I want Martha and Sarah in the room when you read it. I want them to watch you admit you were cruel to my daughter because you were a coward protecting your dirty money. They arrived exactly at 12:10 p.m. The arrival was silent, unnatural. No slamming car doors, no angry pounding on the porch. They walked into my house like ghosts entering a mausoleum. Martha looked utterly destroyed, her flawless makeup streaked, her eyes red and puffy. Sarah looked furious, oscillating between pure hatred for me and desperate concern for her own impending financial doom. I could see the confusion in her eyes. She still didn't know the extent of her father's deceit, only that I had leverage over him. I handed Robert a single sheet of paper, the meticulously crafted apology for Amanda, which also included a short, mandatory sentence stating, "We deeply regret the unforgivable failure to provide unconditional support and love to Amanda on a day meant for family." I then handed Martha and Sarah copies. Robert took a breath so deep it sounded like a mechanical failure. He began to read, his voice cracking on every syllable, barely audible. He got through the first part about Amanda fine, a robotic recitation of forced words. But when he reached the sentence about unconditional support and love, he stopped. Martha covered her mouth, tears finally streaming freely, not of remorse for Amanda, but of terror for the life they were about to lose. Sarah just stared at the paper, her expression hardening as she realized the magnitude of her father's secret and the depth of the betrayal she was being forced to confess to. When Robert finished the required script, I slid a second, much longer document across the table. This was the formal surrender of his trusteeship over Sarah's children's trust, effective immediately, appointing a neutral third-party firm to take over. I had already called the firm that morning. Robert looked at the document, then at me, his eyes wide with realization. He looked over at Sarah, who was now reading the fine print of the financial surrender, connecting the dots of the last 48 hours in a horrifying instant. "You used Amanda to get to the trust," Sarah whispered, her voice lethal, directed not at me, but at her father. "You sacrificed her to protect your fraud?" That was the real climax. Not my revenge, but their internal combustion. Martha started sobbing uncontrollably. Robert just pushed the pen toward me across the table, a silent admission of defeat on all fronts. I took the pen, and one by one, they signed. Amanda watched the entire thing, silent, her hand gripping mine under the table. I waited until the signatures were dry before I made my final move. I picked up the second document, the one detailing the trust fraud, and walked toward the fireplace. I held it up, the expensive paper crisp in my hand. "This," I said, looking directly at Robert, his face ashen, "goes into the fire. You will keep your secret about the seed money. You will keep your marriage for now, Martha. And Sarah, you will get your financial security back, managed by people who aren't thieves. But you will never forget what you did to Amanda." I dropped the documents into the empty hearth and struck a match. The papers caught instantly, the ink curling black as they burned. The heat was intense, but not nearly as intense as the silence that followed. I didn't want their apology to be real, I just needed it recorded. I didn't want them to change, I needed them to know they could be beaten. I looked at Amanda, who squeezed my hand, a small, fierce light back in her eyes. The family unit was not repaired, it was vaporized, replaced by a fragile, uneasy truce built on shared, terrifying secrets. I had won back my daughter's worth, but I had learned a brutal truth. Sometimes, inflicting the right amount of pain is not about healing yourself, but about forcing others to witness the precise moment their monstrous self-interest costs them everything they actually care about. We walked away from the burning paper, leaving them standing in the ruins of their perfect facade. The family was still technically there, but the foundation was gone. We walked into the next room, and for the first time that month, Amanda actually smiled, a real, unforced smile. The future was uncertain, scorched by the events of one month, but at least it was finally ours again.